Okay, today we're over in chapter 6. Now, again, we say the first 9 chapters is setting up the book of Proverbs and giving us instruction that we need to know. As you look at it, it can be broken down in, oh my, how would I break it down? I guess you could do it in 2 or 3 ways. As we've already said, we could say he deals here with 3 or 4 of the most dangerous things of mankind. He tells us how important wisdom is, and that's the big thing in the first 9 chapters, is how important is wisdom. And where can you get wisdom? What will wisdom do for you? The whole idea is wisdom. Get wisdom at all cost. And then he shows certain things of what it will do out here for you. That you don't run around with violent people. The major thing that he deals with and comes back over and over and over again is the sexual weakness of man. How that mankind can be drawn by the harlot. And he comes back to that over and over and over again. And we've dealt with it to quite an extent, so I'm not going to be dealing with it again here this morning. We'll skip some sections that it has in there, but it's just over and over and over again that you have there. I've been asked 2 times this week a question that here it is, he tells man what to do. The male, when you are around, don't go near harlot, run from them and so forth. Why doesn't he warn the female in the same way? Well, I think that there's 2 reasons why. Number 1 is this book, the book of Proverbs, is not written to ungodly people to tell them to quit sinning. For instance, back in chapter 1, when he deals with violent people, he tells a young man, when you go out, he said, you stay away from that kind of a person. Now, you say, why doesn't he tell that person to quit being violent? Why doesn't he say for those ungodly people, you quit being ungodly? Wouldn't that solve the problem? Well, that would solve the problem, but when you tell an ungodly person to quit being ungodly, they're not going to pay any attention to you unless they have an honest heart. He's writing to people with an honest heart. He's writing and he's telling a young man, when you go out into the world, here is what you do. Now, the second thing is, I might say, he doesn't tell the wicked, quit being wicked. He tells the young man, when you're around wicked people, flee, get away from them. That's wisdom. And then when you come close to a harlot, he doesn't tell the harlot, now quit parading around, quit showing your wares and so forth. There is a natural built-in instinct in women to be desired and to try to present themselves in every minute of every day so that they are a desirable thing. And he created man to desire. And so, as he's telling here, when you see this desirable thing, you run. You run. I might use the analogy of fishing. Suppose that we have a lake up here, and we can talk to the fish. And we tell the fish, now, I want you to grow up and be big fish. Roger has a lake up here, and he has put, I think, 170 fish in it or something like this, nice trout, and he wants them to grow up to be big trout. See, wants them to grow up. Now, suppose Roger could talk to those fish. And so he sits down there and he says, now, when these water birds come in, they come in and they grab the fish. That's his problem. That's what he's been working on, is they come in there and they grab those fish. Now, if a fisherman comes up there, suppose fishermen start coming into Roger's lake, and they come in at night or whatever. They throw it out there, and they catch those trout. And Roger wants to keep those trout. Now, if he could talk to the fish, what would he say? Would he go out there and he'd say, now, fish, I'm going to tell those water birds not to come in here anymore? No, he wouldn't mention them. Or I'm going to tell these poachers not to come in and fish anymore. So you just go ahead and be happy fish and swim around and enjoy life in your pool, he wouldn't do that. What he'd do is he goes out and he knows that those water birds by nature are going to be coming in. He knows that there are going to be poachers out there, and these poachers are not going to listen to him. So if Roger could talk to fish, what he would say is, fish, don't you bite on the hook. Whenever you see a big fishing worm land on the top of the water and start sinking, and that big, luscious, enticing fishing worm, just so wonderful and beautiful in your eyes, instead of you swimming up and start nibbling around it, you take off to the other end of the lake. Now the problem is with the fisherman, but the answer is with the fish. If the fish will take off to the other end of the lake, it'll solve the problem. That's what God is saying. God is saying, now when you go out into this world, there's going to be wicked people out there. Here's what you do. When violent people want you to run around with them, don't you do it. Don't you come close to being tempted in the sexual realm, because it's the greatest temptation that man can have. So he's giving us wisdom, and that's the reason he's talking to the young men in these sections here. Now, in chapter 6, we come down, and last week we came down really to verse 15. Verse 15. Now, I'm going to start at 16 for one reason, and that is that he's been telling us here various things that you don't do. One of them, if you would look back at it, is don't be lazy. Don't slumber and sleep. And in other words, get up and work when you can work. Work with all of your might, because that's God's plan for giving you what you need in life. If you look around and you say, well, why do some people have what they need and other people never seem to have it? Well, there's a number of reasons, like there is with everything. But one of the reasons is you might look and see, have I been sleeping? Have I been slumbering? Have I been going around work that is hard? Or am I doing what the Proverbs says, get up and go to work and work hard and make your living? That's what he says wisdom is. Now he comes down then, and he says in verse 16, he said, there are 6 things which Jehovah hateth, yea, 7 which are an abomination unto him. This is a unique expression you find in the Bible. There are other places in the Proverbs that you find where he says, for 3 transgressions, yea, for 4, I will not turn away from it. And you might say, what does he mean by that? These are called numerical proverbs. That's no big deal. Anybody would know they're numerical because he uses some numbers. And so you say, does that say anything? No. What's it really talking about? It's a matter of catching your attention. It's a matter of showing you. Now, there's a number of things. When a father catches his son doing something and says, now, you know you shouldn't be doing that. Oh, Dad, I didn't know it. Look, I've told you 1,000 times, young man, that you shouldn't do that. What did he mean by 1,000? Let's sit down and analyze it. Let's talk about it for 30 minutes. Why didn't he say 489 times? Well, you'd say, in human language, 489 would really lead you to believe that's an exact number. I've told you 489 times, so that's the exact number. But when you say 1,000, that just means something big. I've told you 1,000 times. I've done that 1,000 times. It means something big. Now then, when he says here, 6, yea, 7. In other words, there's a lot of things God hates. Yea, I'm going to tell you 7 of them right here that God hates. God actually despises. Now, let's look at these. And now, we could take each one of these and spend a class on it and say, what does it mean? We're not going to do that. We're going to cover them all today and much more. So, what's he trying to say? Well, we know what these things mean, so we're going to go through them pretty rapidly. Now, there are 7 that are an abomination to him. First of all, before we look at them, let's think now these things that we're getting ready to read are not things that God dislikes. That's the wrong word. If I would say God doesn't want you to do these things, hold it. That's not the wrong word. That's the wrong word. These are things that are an abomination to God. These are things that God despises. These are things, and there's that word abomination, which is about the strongest word that you can find in the human language to tell that it's no good. Okay, now as we talk about these things, we're not talking about little things. We're talking about big things. Now some of them, to you and me, are rather small. We say, well, it's bad, but it's not the worst thing. There are murders and so forth. Well, let's take a look here and see what he puts them in here. He said, there are 7 things which are an abomination. Haughty eyes. Now stop and think about that. What does that mean? Well, all of us have seen haughty eyes. You say, what is it? Oh, it's the look that a person has that appears to feel that they're superior to you. Their eyes tell you something. Your eyes always, as you're talking to people, will express what you're feeling in your heart. What you feel in your heart will come out physically, and you'll be able to read it in human beings' actions. And here it is, haughty eyes tells you what's in your mind. Here's a person that feels superior to me. He feels like that he's better than what I am. And those haughty eyes reveal it. They reveal it. And it's hard to hold it back. Now, what does God think about a person that really feels that he's so much better than everybody else? See? God hates that kind of a thinking pattern. He despises it. It's an abomination unto him. Now, we could take off and we could go to the New Testament and other passages, and we can talk about how that Paul tells us not to think too highly of ourselves, and how he tells us to think of other people as better than ourselves. And those are the ways that we need to do. We need to have a humbleness to us, a lowliness to us. But the point I want to make is that here it is, it's something that I don't think anybody likes, but I'm not sure people would say it's really an abomination. It's just a horrible thing for an individual to have. But the psalmist says, or the proverb says that it is. Then the next he says, a lying tongue. We all know what that means. It's just somebody that you can't trust. They will not tell you the truth. And hands that shed innocent blood. Now there's our murderer. A person that goes out and sheds innocent blood, kills somebody that doesn't deserve killing. Now you might say, well, can you kill somebody that does deserve killing? We got to take the whole Bible to see what it's talking about, and the answer to that is yes, but it must be done in a certain way. God has determined that the government takes human lives, not individuals. And so if we can't go out and take individual lives. But what he's saying right here is that anybody that murders people who are innocent people, God just absolutely has an abomination for such a thing as that. Then he says, a heart that deviseth wicked purposes. Now, this is interesting because it talks about the way people think. A heart, somebody that thinks in wicked ways. How could I do this, or how can I do that? How can I cheat this person out of something? And the way they are thinking, it's a way of thinking, and they're devising wicked purposes. Now, there are people that don't think that way. they think about, how can I help somebody? And they look at the very best of everything. But there are other people that all day long, they devise wicked purposes. I told you last week that rather lengthy story because it, I think, fits a lot in the book of Proverbs about that guy, that sold the Eiffel Tower twice. And that's not all about that guy, but he just went on and on and on telling all the things that guy pulled off. You can't imagine how many things he pulled off that's in there. He invented a box, just a box that would make money. You could put a $1,000 bill in, you leave it for 6 hours, and then that $1,000 bill comes out, and another just exactly like it comes out, so it can be spent and it's not counterfeit. And you say, well, that can't be done. Well, that's right, it can't be done. It's fraud. But he invented this thing, and what he did, he sold it at least 2 times for $25,000 each. See? And the guy just constantly went down through that. Another one that's kind of interesting to me, which would illustrate this, a mind that devises evil purposes, is that this guy was eating dinner, I think, with his friends. And so they walk out of the restaurant and they look up, and up here, probably on a construction site, there was a pickup truck that was a little bit higher, and a guy asleep in there. And he had his feet hanging out the window. And so this guy says, look at that. Man, those feet are big feet, aren't they? Wow. And they looked at him, and they were huge feet. And so this guy says, I'll bet that guy, how tall do you think that guy is? And so they said, one of them, well, he's 6'6", or he's this or that. And this guy said, I'll bet you that guy is not over 5'8". I'll bet you he's a little fella. And they said, oh, you're crazy. No, I'll bet you is. You want to put your money where your mouth is? I'll bet you. And he bet him a big wad of money. I'm talking about a big bunch of money. Yeah, I'll bet you, $1,000 that guy is under 6 feet. He's rather small. Okay, we'll take you. So he bet his buddies, and they all got the bet going. So they go up there, and they knock on the door, and ask a guy. He gets down, opens up, and he's about 5 feet tall, just a little fella. And he turns around to his friends and gives me money. He took the money. And so he won his bet. Now, you say, what happened? Well, the day before, this is a true story, see. The day before, this guy had gone out there and walked through here, and he saw that little fella with those great big feet. And he said, here's the catcher, how can I make money out of those feet? And so he's thinking, how can I make money out of those feet? Now we've got a mind that is devising evil purposes. And so he wondered how he could do that, and he made his money. Well, what had really happened was, the day before he saw this guy with these big feet. He walks up to him and he says, hey, mister, how would you like to make several dollars tomorrow at 8:30? All you got to do is just hang your feet out that pickup truck, and I'll pay you. You see this money? And so it was all a planned situation that he had, but he devised evil purposes. Now, this is what he's saying here, that we can do this in 1,000 different ways. And God hates people that takes advantage of other people, is the point that he's making. Then feet that are swift in running to mischief. Now, you can see certain things happening, and then you see a certain type of individual that runs to that. For instance, you see a house on fire. A lot of people jump in their car and run to get as close to that house as they possibly can. Or they see a traffic accident, and they try to go and get as close to that as they possibly can. They want to run. They want to see what is causing this. They want to get up there. Now, that's not necessarily the person he's talking about here. He's talking about the person that will run like that, a person that will run to do mischief. For instance, if I ask you, would you come and go with me this afternoon while we go visit the sick or do something? Oh, I don't think so, Or, well, maybe like this. But suppose this afternoon I said, hey, I've got something here we can do. And so I see something that we can take advantage of. I can steal something out of Steve's garage this afternoon without him knowing it. We can go, we can do. Mischief is not just a little thing, but it's a immoral thing. So I come to you and I tell you, hey, here's a big deal we got, and it's exciting. Okay, let's go do it. And so let's stop and ask ourselves, how do we react to things? Do we run toward good things, or do we tend to run toward evil things? And then a false witness that uttereth lies. Now, there's a difference between a false witness and a liar. We've talked about a liar up there before. God abominates a liar. But now then, a false witness. A false witness is somebody that gives testimony against or for someone else. And when you give a witness, a testimony, you're taking that person's life into your hands. And you're either going to help that person if they're innocent, or you're going to help convict that person if they're not innocent. And you have the power to change that person's life. And it's a lot of power. You can either do it for the good by telling the truth, or you can do it for the evil, where it'll really hurt that person if you bear false witness. And so God's plan in this earth is for witnesses to always tell the truth. God's law is based upon certain things. You can't do certain things without 2 or 3 witnesses. And he points out that these are the witnesses are the most dependable type of evidence that there is on this earth, is getting these witnesses to testify to certain things. And so when you're testifying about what somebody did, always keep in mind you're taking part of their life into your hands. And you can either help them or you can hurt them. And then the last is, he that soweth discord among the brethren. So somebody that would sow problems, disharmony, discourse, trouble among the brethren. Say something, do something that causes 2 people not to like each other, or 2 people to go their separate ways. Anything that will cause unhappiness, discord, disrespect among the brethren. God's plan is, among his people, everybody be as one. And when people are not as one, somebody is at fault. Somebody has a problem. And God says, I hate anybody, any action that will cause discord among the brethren. Now, as we look at these things, the interesting thing is, some of these things we can see as really bad, like murder. That we'd say is really bad. But what about these other things? And we could say, well, yeah, okay, well, that false witness, that's a pretty bad thing. But, so we start looking, and my only question is, as we look at these things, do we have the same viewpoint that God has? Do we look at these things the same way God does? And if we do, we'll put them in our life, and we'll be a certain kind of person. We'll be a person up here that is not a haughty person. He's not a liar. He doesn't shed innocent blood. He doesn't devise wicked purposes in any way. It's always good. He doesn't run to do evil things. And he doesn't lie when his testimony is needed. And he doesn't cause any problem among the brethren. And when we look at those are 7 pretty important things. This now, is what you do. Now in verse 20, he comes back to the same topic he's talked about before. And I want to emphasize this because I want us to see it here in the first 9 chapters. That is, he comes back here now to how important wisdom is. So, my son, remember, here is Mrs. Wisdom talking. Keep the commandments of thy father, forsake not the law of thy mother, bind them continually upon thy heart, tie them about thy neck. You say, haven't we read that before? Yep, we have. But this is a second time that the Holy Spirit has put that in this book. So we have to say, wonder why. Why would the Holy Spirit put the same thing in a book 2 times? And when thou walkest, it shall lead thee. When thou sleepest, it shall watch over thee. When thou awakest, it shall talk with thee. For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is a light, and reproofs of instruction are the ways of life. Hasn't he told us that? Hasn't he emphasized the importance of wisdom? What wisdom will do? Yep. Well, why is he telling us twice? Well, it's not just twice. He's told us this 3 or 4 times already. So, in the first 9 chapters, that's a unique thing about the book of Proverbs. It will repeat itself. It will tell you over and over and over again. Why? Why does it do that? If you hear a father, say a father of teenagers, you got a boy and a girl, and they're twins, and they're both 16, and they just passed their driver's test. So they're getting ready to go out and date and drive a car and so forth. What will dad and mom tell them? And every time before they leave home, here it is, mom will say, now, honey, remember, ... Well, does a mom tell her daughter that twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times because she thinks her daughter is dumb and didn't hear and can't remember? No, she doesn't. Well, why would any mom tell her daughter more than 1 time not to do a certain thing, or a son? And we all know the answer to that. Because it's really, really, really important. Now, she might say, now, you watch who you ride with tonight. Don't you get in the car with somebody. But mom is not going to say, now, honey, watch how many milkshakes you drink. Okay? Just make sure. No, she's not going to say that. So you know when you hear a loving parent repeating instructions to their loving children, the children they love, this is important. And they know, mom and dad knows, these are the danger spots in your life. So that's the reason it's repeated. Now let's look at the next thing he says here. In verse 24. To keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the foreigner's tongue, lust not after her beauty. What are we back into again? See, we're back in to that same thing that we've talked about. He just keeps coming back, coming back, coming back. Son, when you go out tonight, you watch for this. Next week, son, when you go to that party, you don't get caught up in this. The next week, son, make sure. Why does the dad keep doing this? Because dad knows the weakness of that boy. And he knows that how great the chance is of that boy getting caught in this. See? He doesn't say, now, son, I want you to stay off of whatever that route is that goes through Lake City, Bothell Lake City Road. I wouldn't even get on that road because there's a little place there, little hamburger place, and they sell alligator meat. And don't go down there and eat any alligator meat. Now you say, Lowell, you lost your mind. Why would a dad tell his son not to do that? That's the point. I don't know. I have no idea. I made a special trip down there to get some alligator meat. No, he wouldn't tell his son that because there's no danger in it. But what he would say is, son, stay off of First Avenue. Just stay around. Don't even drive down the street. And so that's what the book of Proverbs is trying to get us to see over and over and over and over again is what wisdom will do for us. Okay, there's where we close today.